Alaska is the largest state in the United States, 1.7 million square kilometers, and most of it is empty. Forest, mountains, places where humans have never set foot. Or at least, that's what they say. Because in March 2019, flying over one of these empty areas, I found something. Something that shouldn't be there. Something perfectly organized, deliberate, and when I tried to report it, I discovered that there are things you simply cannot report. Not because they're not real, but because someone doesn't want them to be. March 2019. I had just completed 2 years as a bush pilot in the Alaskan interior. If you don't know what that means, let me explain. I flew to places where there are no roads, no cities, sometimes not even updated maps. My job was simple. Deliver supplies to remote research camps, transport scientists, sometimes rescue those who got lost. The pay wasn't great, but the freedom made up for it. No boss breathing down my neck. No traffic. Just me, the plane, and thousands of kilometers of absolutely nothing. But nothing is a relative term. Because on that day in March, I discovered that even in the emptiest place in the world, there's always something waiting to be found. And some things should never be found. It was a Tuesday. Clear skies, temperature around -5 degrees Celsius. Perfect conditions for flying. I had 2 passengers that day, a biologist and a geologist from the University of Alaska. They were heading to a collection point about 200 kilometers north of Fairbanks. Dense forest area, no permanent human presence. Takeoff was smooth. The 2 were in the back seat talking about soil samples and moose migration. I kind of tuned out and focused on the flight. When you do this every day, you go on autopilot. Literally. 2 hours later, we were over what I call the dead zone. It's a specific region where the radio starts to fail. Natural interference from the mountains. It happens. It's not a problem, as long as nothing goes wrong. I was checking the instruments when something caught my attention through the side window. Down below, in the middle of the endless forest, there was a clearing. Clearings aren't uncommon. Sometimes it's an old fire. Sometimes it's a natural tree fall. But this one was different. It had a shape, a symmetry, and it had color. In the middle of all that green and brown, there were patches of white. Curiosity. That was my first mistake. I deviated slightly from the route to get a better view. The biologist in the back seat didn't even notice. The geologist had headphones on. As I approached the clearing, the white patches began to take shape. They weren't rocks. They weren't snow. They were structures. Vertical. Tall. Maybe 2-3 meters each. I reduced altitude. 2,500 feet. Then 2,000. The plane swayed slightly with an air current, but I maintained course. I needed to see what it was. And then, I saw crosses. At least 15 of them. All white. All the same size. Arranged in 3 perfect rows. Like a cemetery. But it wasn't a cemetery. Because cemeteries don't have movement. At first I thought it was the wind. Maybe some fabric hanging from the crosses, swaying. But when I passed directly over the clearing at less than 1,500 feet altitude, I realized it wasn't fabric. It was people. Attached to the crosses. And some of them were moving. My stomach turned. My hand froze on the yoke. For a second, my brain simply refused to process what my eyes were seeing. I turned the plane. Made another pass. Lower. 1,200 feet. Dangerously low for that area. But I needed to be sure. Needed to confirm I wasn't having some kind of hallucination caused by altitude or fatigue. But I wasn't. It was real. Some of the figures were completely motionless. Heads hanging. Arms dangling. But 3, maybe 4, were writhing. Trying to break free. One of them had their head raised, and I swear on everything that's sacred, it was looking up. Directly at my plane. My first reaction was panic. Pure and simple. My hands were shaking on the yoke. My heart was beating so hard I could hear the pulse in my ears. I pulled the plane away from the clearing, gaining altitude rapidly. The biologist shouted from the back, "Hey, what was that?" She had felt the abrupt maneuver. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My mouth was dry. My mind was racing, trying to understand what the hell I had just seen. For a few seconds, I tried to convince myself I was wrong. That they were scarecrows. Or mannequins. Some kind of bizarre art project in the middle of the forest. Because the alternative was unthinkable. I grabbed the radio. Tried to contact the control tower in Fairbanks. Nothing. Just static. Of course. I was in the dead zone. Changed the frequency. Tried emergency. Nothing. I took a deep breath. tried to think. There was a logging camp about 40 kilometers southeast of my position. They had long-range radio. Changed course. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life. Every second felt like an eternity. The image of those crosses, those bodies, was burned into my retina. I couldn't stop seeing it. Finally, I heard a voice on the radio. A man with a Texan accent. Logging camp supervisor. This is November 7-2 Alpha, I need to report an emergency. November 7-2 Alpha, this is Timber Camp Delta. What's the nature of the emergency? And there, I froze. How the hell was I going to explain what I'd seen? If I told the truth, the guy would think I was on drugs. Or crazy. Or both. I spotted what appears to be people in danger. Approximate coordinates. And I passed the location. I need you to contact search and rescue. It's urgent. The man was silent for a few seconds. Then responded, received November 7-2 Alpha. I'll make the call. But, people in danger? What exactly did you see? Just, make the call. Please. I turned off the radio. Couldn't continue that conversation. My passengers were quiet now. They knew something was wrong. But they didn't ask. And I didn't offer explanations. I completed the flight. Dropped the two off at the collection point. They left the plane in silence. The biologist looked at me before closing the door, as if she wanted to ask something. But she didn't. And I took off. Alone again. With those images haunting every thought. The return flight was empty. I can't describe it any other way. I was on literal and figurative autopilot. My body was flying the plane. My mind was trapped in that clearing. I landed at the field at 4:37 p.m. Turned off the engine. Sat in the cockpit for almost 20 minutes. Just sitting. Staring at nothing. Eventually, I got out of the plane and went straight to my supervisor's cabin, Charles. Former military pilot, 30 years of Alaska experience. If anyone was going to understand, it would be him. I walked in. He was at the desk filling out paperwork. Looked at me and his expression changed immediately. What happened? I sat down and told him. Everything. The crosses. The bodies. The movement. Charles stared at me. Without blinking. When I finished, he sighed deeply. You called rescue? The logging camp. Asked them to call. He scratched his beard. Was silent for a long time. Then said, 3 days off. Non-negotiable. You need rest. I protested. Said I needed to know what was going to happen. Investigating isn't your job. You reported it. Now leave it to those who have to deal with it. Go home. I went back to the cabin. Couldn't stay still. That night I went to the local bar. Needed to talk to someone who understood. I found Dutch. Retired pilot. 40 years of Alaska under his belt. I bought him a beer. Told him my story. He listened in silence. When I finished, he finally spoke. You're not the first. He told me that in 1987 he saw something similar. Stakes with bodies hanging from them. Reported it. Tried to get help. You know what happened? Nothing. They told me I was stressed. That altitude had affected me. When I went back to look, there was nothing there. Like it never existed. He looked at me. Empty eyes. But also, fear. There are places here that don't follow the rules. Places where things from another time can leak through. And the more you search, the worse it gets. My advice? Forget it. Don't go back there. Don't look for answers. He left. Left me alone with an untouched beer and more questions than answers. The next day I called the search and rescue office. The woman who answered was polite but direct. There was no record of any operation in the area. No call from the logging camp. Nothing. I insisted. Gave exact coordinates. Pilot identification number. She put me on hold. Came back 3 minutes later. Sir, there's no record of human activity at the coordinates provided. Also, we checked recent satellite images. There are no clearings in the region described. No clearings. I hung up. Stared at the phone. My stomach turned. Late in the afternoon, Charles called me to his office. He had an expression I'd never seen. Discomfort. Maybe fear? He placed a folder on the desk. Satellite photos. Of the area I'd flown over. Dense forest. No clearing. No crosses. Nothing. I got a call today, he said. Low voice. From up top. Way above my head. They told me to file your report. They told me that sometimes pilots see things. Stress. Fatigue. Altitude. He looked at me directly. They told me not to let you fly that region again. And not to talk about it anymore. With anyone. He closed the folder. You understand? I understood. Perfectly. I spent the following weeks in a strange state, functioning but not living, flying my routes, talking with passengers, doing my job. But inside, something had broken. It wasn't just what I'd seen. It was what came after. The systematic denial. The way everyone simply erased what I reported. I started questioning myself. Did I really see that? Was Dutch right? And there are places where reality simply fails? Or was I losing my sanity? The answer came 3 months later. I was doing a different route, much further south, transporting medical equipment to a remote clinic. Nothing to do with that area. But during the flight, I grabbed the radio to check weather conditions. And I heard something on the emergency frequency. It was a fragmented transmission. A male voice. Young. Terrified. Need help. Coordinates. Don't know where. Saw people. Trapped. Please. Someone? The transmission cut out. I tried to respond. Nothing. Tried to triangulate the signal origin. It was coming from an area northeast of my position. Close. Very close to the region where I'd seen the crosses. I had 2 options. Ignore it, follow my route, or deviate, and risk everything again. I changed course. I flew in the approximate direction of the transmission, swept the area, looked for any sign of a crashed aircraft, smoke, a camp. And then, I saw a clearing, different from the previous one, smaller, but with the same, impossible symmetry. There were 4 wooden structures. They weren't crosses this time. They were poles, tall, and there was something tied to the top of each one. I descended to 1,000 feet, dangerously low. My hand trembled on the yoke, and I saw clothes, human clothes, jackets, pants, swaying in the wind, but they were empty, as if the bodies inside them had simply disappeared, except for one, the one on the central pole. That one still had shape, still had volume, and as I flew over, the head turned and followed me with its gaze. I pulled the plane away, planned. 2,000 feet, 3,000, didn't look back, didn't call anyone on the radio, just flew. I completed my delivery, returned to the field, didn't report anything, didn't tell Charles, didn't tell anyone, because I understood, finally understood what Dutch had tried to tell me. Some places don't want to be found, don't want to be explained, and the more you search, the more they pull you in. 6 months later, I left Alaska, went back south, got a job with a commercial airline, predictable routes, lit airports, no solitude, no silence. But sometimes, on quiet nights, I still see those crosses, those poles, and I wonder, how many other clearings are out there? How many other pilots have seen what I saw, and never came back to tell? And even worse, were those people on the crosses ever pilots too? If you made it this far, thank you for listening. I know it's not easy to process something like this. Believe me, I'm still processing it, but I needed to tell it, because if it happened to me, it probably happened to others. And maybe, just maybe, someone out there has answers. If you've ever seen something inexplicable in Alaska or any other remote place, leave it in the comments. We're not alone in this. If this story impacted you, leave a like. Subscribe to the channel because I have more stories like this to tell. Stories that no one else will tell. And remember, not everything out there wants to be found.